I'll do the introduction for anybody that hasn't been to one of these before. For everybody else, you'll have heard this many times. Okay, so good morning and a very warm welcome to this Explain Pain in the Clinic. My name is Joanna and I am Director of NOI in Europe. And I'm joined this morning by my very good friend and Principal NOI teacher, Tim Beams. Look at that happy smiling face, everybody. Oh, we love doing these, Tim, don't we?
Yeah.
Tim's been a NOI teacher for well over 15 years. He has taught literally hundreds of Explain Pain courses to thousands of clinicians all over the world. He is an active clinician himself, specialising in complex and persistent pain, and he is also founder of an organisation called Le Pub Scientifique, which is an online platform for clinicians to learn about the latest developments in clinical practice and pain researchers directly from the researchers and pain specialists. They have a fantastic podcast. I highly recommend that you go over and check it out, or check out the website. Tim, if you don't mind, just drop in the links in the chat. That would be great. Thank you very much. Tim is also author of the Graded Motor Imagery Handbook with David Butler and Lorimer Mosley. So these sessions are all about giving you a taste of Explain Pain and how to practically use it in the clinic. Some of you will have already done an Explain Pain course, so these sessions will reinforce and expand what you've already learned. But if you are new to Explain Pain, then this will give you a little taste of what we cover in the core courses. Just a couple of things before we start. Tim will be talking for about 20 minutes. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we will get to as many of those as we can. If you want to watch the recording of this session, you can access it on our NOI Group Clinical Discussion YouTube channel. So I'm going to drop the link for that into the chat now. So that's there. So do come on over and subscribe, and that way you'll be notified when any of the new videos are uploaded. Sorry, I haven't dropped the link. I will in a minute when I finish talking. So today we are going to be talking about threat, danger, and pain. How to adjust the danger dial in the pain experience. So Tim, could you just tell us what you're going to cover in this session, and then I will start with the first question.
I feel belligerent today. I want to say, no, I'm not going to do that.
Well, you can say that if you want. I don't mind.
Sorry. Sorry. No, we're gonna. We just want to drop in a little bit around what threat. Why are we going to bother talking about threat and what the relationship with pain? Thank you. I thought like there's some metaphors that sort of fit this quite nicely around danger and alarms and what have you. So maybe we should just introduce those for those who've not come across them, but I'm sure many people have. But I'd want to just dive a little deeper as well. So I'm interested in just bringing in some of the biology, some of the systems level, and then we might go down more hormonally as well and think about the relationship that those have, but then come back out to the bigger, to the whole person, and see what or why we might apply those, that not like how we apply knowledge to that person. So yeah. That's my hope in half an hour. I mean,
yeah, 20 minutes. You can do it. Talk fast.
20 minutes.
That sounds awesome, Tim. I'm really excited. And then we'll just wrap it all up at the end with a little bit about how that fits within the Explain Pain methodology. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, what has threat got to do with pain?
Yeah, well, so we often hear about threat and danger linked with pain, and there is a couple of ways that there might be links here. I mean, one is about the relationship of things in our world and how that influences us. So, stressors and trauma and what have you seems quite tightly linked. So that's a sort of one level, a sort of a person level, and then and then it looks as though, I mean, experimentally, we can create these conditions as well, where we can create we can create a relative threat of a person, a condition that feels threatening for someone. They feel unsafe.
Okay.
Um, and there's something really interesting about pain is that pain is also in itself this sort of self-fulfilling stressor. It can be a sort of self-generating trauma. It can be a part of the contribution to the dial, if you want. We're going to talk about dials and amplification and dimmers and things like that. But so it's almost like in itself it can be a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. So yeah, there's a number of different things that we could talk about here, and the first thing I wanted to talk about is the notion of the dial. I drew a dial very simply. So I don't know, threat, high threat, low threat,
Yeah.
and started populating it slightly. And the thing that I put on there is around as you build knowledge and experience of your world. I mean, there's something really wonderful actually about the learning process that you go through to identify safety and threats. I mean, safety comes in a number of different ways as well, doesn't it? You know, we might expect safety to come from things like your family, your home, but also we see in pain where that can be lost, and adverse childhood experiences are, you know, a key part of some experiences in later life of people having ill health and being more susceptible to having pain and ongoing pain problems as well. So in it, it's like you can already see sort of the flavor of where a lack of safety, or there might be threats as well. There might be like you know, very big traumas as well in someone's life, a loss of a loved one, war, etc. But they don't have to be massive as well. And we can have like tiny, what are called tiny T's, little traumas. I mean, it sounds sort of a bit belittling, doesn't it, calling it tiny? But
Like
there
what?
are, we hear in our patients very, very, very often, we hear people saying, well, but it's not really, I mean, it's not so bad, you know, there's this going on in my life, there's this going on in my life, but you know, it doesn't feel like that's enough in a way. So we all have those things, and there are times in our life when we are more resilient, and there are times when we are more vulnerable and susceptible as well. And it might be that at one point in our life, when there is more vulnerability, that we're more susceptible to developing pain in the presence of these tiny T's or with these stressors in our environment, where at another time we might have been more resilient and they, you know, metaphorically speaking, bounce off us, you know, they don't touch us so deeply. So that's sort of a brief sort of touching the surface there. And I want to, like, one of the things that I educate my patients around is also the like honoring your ability to be able to recognize threat and safety, like because actually your inability to notice certain things that are threatening is in itself quite harmful. And an obvious example here is certain cancers that kind of go under the radar, that aren't picked up as being sufficiently threatening, dangerous for us to mount some sort of body or physiological response. So actually, I like sometimes it can just help to in a way honor that like, oh, wow, isn't it amazing that you've been able to identify that this is actually a threat, and given, and this is where Explain Pain fits beautifully here, given our knowledge of the messages out there abounding around pain, we have got this amazing like it's social media platforms, press. We've got messages that come from our family, teachers, loved ones, etc., that all influence that knowledge and understanding around pain that might have both positive or negative influences on our understanding. So make things seem more threatening or seem safer as well.
Can I just ask here, Tim, in the context of what you were saying about explain pain, is this where the dims and the sims come in? Yeah.
Yeah, essentially we're calling these dangers and safeties, but danger in me is a dim and safety in me is a sim. Um, yeah, so, but I'm quite happy that we have a bit more flexibility in what we call them. We've called them amplifiers and calmers or dimmers, haven't we? And some people, we might use the phrases unhelpful and helpful, or unhealthy and healthy, and then it just depends on the context within which you're working with that person.
Yeah, I like that it's not just that there are options there, because that I can understand why somebody would find amplifiers and dimmers an easier term to use, in the same way that we've talked about turning up and down a dial for this session.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Exactly. And
Thank you.
metaphor is just one way of putting across something that's a bit complex, but in a way that hopefully both of you can understand it. So if, a volume switch is something that helps, or an alarm is another way of being able to put across that point. Amplification, it sounds like a sound system for me as a DJ in the past, a long time ago, that for me resonates. And you can see where actually having that ability to be able to turn the dial up at appropriate times, notice when there is real threat there, is brilliant, awesome. But also be able to know when you bring that down as well, and that's really, I'm coming almost to the end of where I want to get with that, because there is if we're thinking about explain pain, it is important to not make people scared. Like, we're trying to give someone skills to be able to negotiate their environment in the future, not just in the here and now. So being able to appropriately identify when actually there's something I'm experiencing that I am a bit worried about, and I need to take some action for, because we can be a bit blasé sometimes with certain pain conditions. So it is important, and those are the sort of functional skills that we're trying to give someone, that knowledge. Because said simply, Joe, like, if there's something going on in me, having worked so much with pain, I also need to recognize and honor myself and my body. God, I'm just thinking about a time I went to the dentist because I had a root canal infection. Do you remember, a couple of years ago? And the dentist was like, well, how bad is it on a scale of 0 to 10? And I wanted to say, well, actually, I'm not sure how valid that scale is with me. And I said, look, I'm going to tell you a score, but that score for me might be different from someone else. So I'm obviously an awkward person going to the dentist. And then I told him the score. I can't remember what it was, and they said it doesn't sound bad enough for an infection. And I was like, no, I'm not sure you're listening to. I'm not sure you listen to me. So I don't know why that's come up. I was talking about dentistry with a patient just before this session, so that's probably why. But like, in himself, I was asking for safety, like, listen to me, validate me, etc. We've talked about this so much, haven't we? And he's giving messages of not being safe, like not listening to me, and. So we've got ways of creating conditions for threat or safety. Like, we can be wonderful conduits for making it a terrible environment for that person to be in. And then notions of nocebo come in here, don't they? And versus placebo. So I wanted to drop into a bit of systems-based stuff as well. Because a lot of people have heard of things like fight and flight. And they might have heard of adrenaline, and some people have heard of cortisol, and the stress chemicals sort of get wrapped around this, don't they? Which typically we might associate with being more amplifiers. being present when there are threats in our world. But people have actually heard of some of the sort of balancing systems as well, and those hormones related to that. So things like serotonin and the parasympathetic nervous system. Even I was having a chat with a patient yesterday, and he was talking about reading the polyvagal theory and wanting to know whether that had anything to do with with the shift in what was going on in his body. And this is the sort of balance between stress systems, very, very crudely. So some people have heard of those things. So identifying and giving someone a little bit of a flavor and understanding of what might be going on in their body can be really helpful sometimes. Like inviting them into that conversation. I mean, it did play in really well, but I have literally just been talking about this with a patient, and her knowledge was wonderful. Like
how far do you go with it? Do you lead in gently with some information, or find out what the patient knows first and then plug
bit,
that in?
yeah. I normally invite, first of all, would it be interesting, helpful, etc. And what do you know about this, that, and the other? Or I mean, for you, Joe, for instance, I was talking last night, wasn't I, with Anne Mulders? So like, it was really fresh in my mind that I was like, oh God, I'd love to share some of this knowledge and what we were talking about. So yeah, part of me is a bit like, I'm really excited. I want to share something I'm really excited about, and then having to hold myself back and invite that dialogue and know when it's enough and when we could go deeper and how, whether we can explore and I generally sort of invite conversation and then I want to know what they know about it, what they understand about it, and we can then develop it from there.
Now, so if a patient did actually ask you, can you give me a basic like introduction to what's going on here in my body, what would you say?
Exactly what we're talking about now. Yeah, I would drop in and talk a little bit about, have you heard about the fight and flight, and what do you understand about it? And so I would do exactly the same, and I would say, do you know that there's an opposing system as well? I mean, it's a bit crude, it's not exactly correct, but it's a nice sort of introduction into that conversation. Is it worth sort of saying something? I mean, we talk about cortisol liberating energy stores.
I'd love to hear it, actually. I'd love
what's
to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, and adrenaline. I mean, you can put something in their experience, and you can say, remember a time when you were really stressed about something. How did it feel in your body? Like, what do you notice? What do you, like Joe, like when you're really stressed, what do you feel in your body?
Oh, it's like a big lump on my chest. I know exactly. I've got it really narrow. I know exactly what it is. It feels like I've got something stuck in my throat and I've got something sat on my chest. And I always used to say it's like an elephant. Oh, the elephant's got off now.
Yeah.
That's how it feels.
And then and it would be lovely to say, and what would be the opposite for you? What would that feel like? And what do you think of that as?
Like you can breathe.
I can breathe. And when do you get into that state?
Yeah. And yeah, definitely.
So we can explore this together. We can develop it together, can't we? I don't have to do all of the work.
Yeah, I love that.
But we can add like additional details and like it can be really, really helpful. So if we think about what that's like, what are the certain sorts of things that bring you into your stressed state? What are the amplifiers? And we can identify them, and we can say, have you got any control over them?
Yeah.
What have you got?
For me, it's walking in nature and meditating. And those are I have a toolbox about 4 or 5 things, but those are my top 2.
Yeah. And they're like brilliant. Like I can't give you anything better than that.
Yeah.
But so that would, you were telling me about things that you do to keep you like you know, in a great place, like your karmas perhaps, as opposed to I mean, I know a few amplifiers in your life perhaps at the moment as well, but some of the karmas, and but not everybody recognizes them. And one of the things that pain does, which
Mm.
is really amazing about pain, is it actually puts some barriers up for some of them as well, because we get some of our sims and our safety cues from things like our connections with our friends and family,
Yeah.
and pain can start getting in the way of that. We can start sort of you know, moving ourselves, taking ourselves, removing ourselves from those situations,
Yeah.
being intimate with someone, you know, hugging, kissing, whatever, then that same thing as well. And you can start seeing how that can influence having things that create joy in your life. I mean, for me it would be eating a really lovely meal. And then a lot of people, like, those are the sorts of experiences that are changed,
Mm.
you know, but these are simple things that we could say, are there ways of bringing that back into our life, you know,
Mm.
and what do we have more control over, and can we invite conversation, can we invite support from people, from your loved ones as well, to help you through those
Mm.
processes as well, so that it's happening on a daily and a weekly basis.
I love how two-way this is. When I love that the person that you're talking to is just completely involved in the process, and this is something that we have talked about so many times, sort of almost theoretically, but you know, with through examples, you can see exactly in this situation how it works so well, turning up
Yeah,
and down the dial, and the feel good, feel bad dial.
like, and I mean, God, you Joe, you know me anyway, but but like a massive shift from me is me prescribing you must do this, and
Mm.
inviting, and people have often tried
Inviting.
many different things, many
Yeah.
different techniques, and but they don't always have confidence in those techniques, and therefore it might be ways that you're just able to support them through that process.
I do have to just say here, Tim, this is what you do give to people, is when they do come on courses with you, you give people the confidence that actually what you are doing already is right. And you just give people, you instill that confidence in people to know that somebody with your experience and breadth of knowledge is saying, actually, that is right. And this is why, because this is what the effect it's having in the person's body. And though it may seem simple, it's actually really important.
Yeah, I mean, it can help. It's my iceberg as well, isn't it? Well, I mean, we're the drop in the
Yeah,
ocean at the moment of what we could go into.
yeah,
Can
exactly.
I, because I really feel like it's important as well from a pain sort of perspective, is that often, like, bringing in safety is a wonderful thing. And it might help to create some calming and turn the volume down and sort of dial things down. But it can also create some avoidance of us sort of bringing us back into life as well. And that when we do start to want to bring life back, then people can sort of come a cropper. You
Mm.
know, that they can experience pain. So there is also, I believe, an important phase of us understanding how we introduce, reintroduce, bring back challenge,
Mm. Can
where
you just
someone
reference, Tim, why you're talking about this right now today from Anne Mulder's last night?
uh, what now, what
So
this
yeah,
moment.
the session that you were in last night with Dr. Anne Mulders about
Ah,
fear avoidance was
oh yeah,
run
we were
Le
talking
Pub.
about fear and avoidance and linking those two together, and I am going to talk about, because we had a little conversation, and I'll have I want to drop in some of that, because it's so current in my thinking. But yeah, so this fits this perfectly, doesn't it, Joe, from last
Mm.
night? This need to bring back challenge and variation within those challenges as well, because it's not enough to just get good at one thing. It's about bringing back that sort of freedom in life, and freedom in life means being spontaneous. It means sometimes not having full control over some things. It means that you do something and you're not fully certain of what the outcome will be, and that will be a sort of full recovery for me for someone with pain. And that's kind of, Anne started to talk about that last night, didn't she? But one of the things that I wanted to talk about, which she just talked about a little bit, was the notion of expectation and violating those expectations. It's such a horrible phrase, isn't it? Expectation, violation. But if you're expecting something to be painful and then you don't experience it as painful, or it's not the same pain as you were expecting, that violation in the expectation and the reality actually might be really important in shifting our next expectations, our new, what would be called our priors. So, I feel like this is important. Creating safety is one thing, but it's not enough for this true transformation. If you want, for someone, for true recovery, it would be important to create the conditions where you are getting someone into a situation, you're asking them to do something, engage with an activity, go to work, do a movement, whatever it might be, where there is an association that this might not go well, or I might experience pain, and giving them some strategies, some skills, maybe some things like distraction, it might be certain cognitive strategies, it might be things like you've mentioned, Joe, maybe that you're setting yourself up with a meditation beforehand that means that you're more likely to create that violation and then there's surprise there. I was expecting it to be painful. Oh wow, it wasn't as painful as I was expecting. Maybe next time I do it, it might be okay as well. And that was one of the things Anne was talking about last night, is that actually the surprisal, the difference there is important in learning mechanisms into the future. So it seems that that might be, and this is a really interesting avenue for us, because we've been talking about it for a bit, haven't we? But it would be really interesting to see how that's developed as well. How long-lasting behavioral change, which is really at the heart of Explain Pain, can be, given your ability to shift those expectations in someone, and that comes from both them having knowledge and understanding, but it's also trying things out, doing it. And the important thing there is that you're using both of those together as well, which is really what Explain Pain is, isn't it?
Completely. And Tim, we are running out of time, but we've got 2 questions, and I always like to try and get to the questions if we can. So it's a little bit, apologies, Eleanor. When that's where it gets complex, when someone is so stuck in their pain. When do you look at people with massive ME, for example, when the only thing they can do is lying in bed with the lights off?
I know when you look at people stuck, I'm not 100% sure if there's a question there, but it's challenging if someone is in a situation, and I have someone in mind here, where their life had become so tiny that they were literally in a dark room when I met them, lying on a bed.
I think that's what it means, yeah.
And that is not a life of, that's not thriving. I mean, that's barely surviving then, isn't it?
So where do you start with that, Tim?
Where do we start? We start with, we chunk things up and we trying to find pleasure in tiny things to begin with. But that's going to be a long road. And some of that is reducing some of the fear and worry around what pain means to them as well, and the messaging behind that, because often people have got to that stage because they become so avoidant, because actually their safety behavior is, if I avoid activity, if I avoid getting out of bed, I won't be in pain, and I would rather avoid getting out of bed and not be in pain than I would get out of bed and be in loads of pain, because it is horrible. So you can understand where people get to with that. We didn't quite talk, I'd love to have talked about valency and positive and negative valency and things like that, but that's really, that is that you have an emotive response to something, and if that emotive response is strong enough, and in this case in a negative direction, then it makes sense that you have an avoidance strategy based on that response. So
you would try tiny little steps. with
Yeah,
anything.
and it wouldn't be blaming them. It's like going, it makes total sense that that's the strategy that you've used.
Yeah,
And it's about then working and coaching with them in that, because like if it could be really scary, the prospect of, well, what can we do coming out? I've tried getting out of bed, or I've tried turning my lights on, and which they will have, and probably had a pretty bad association with doing that as well. So yeah,
yeah,
we're finding ways of creating a condition where when they try that in a fairly controlled manner, then they have shift, like the reality is a shift from the expectation.
yeah. Thank you, Tim. That's
I know
great.
that's being very that's not being very specific.
No, that was great. Great, thank you. And then one other from in the Q&A from Mark. How do you reintroduce exercise or engagement with the painful limb when this is perceived as a threat for the patient?
um, Doing exactly what we've talked about so
Yeah,
far. I mean, I'd only engage with that with them having knowledge and understanding. And like we've talked about again in previous episodes about trial and learning. People try things out even when you're creating the safest environment to do it in, and there's a massive reaction, and people can flare up, and that can derail people. So having the skills and the understanding and the knowledge that that can happen, but not being scared of it, and being able to learn from it is an important part of that piece as well, because it's almost inevitable that as you build in, new challenges, try things out that you've been avoiding, then there can be negative responses. If you want, there can be painful responses to it.
amazing, Tim. Thank you so much. That was such a good session. I love it when we get questions and lots of engagement from the people who are watching. Thank you so much for those questions and all your comments. And I can see the other suggestions that have been put in the chat between everybody. That's fantastic. Thank you, everybody.
Can I jump in, because I've seen a couple. I just scanned very, very quickly. Sorry, it is really quickly, but there might be opportunities in chewing your food, of someone loving sitting next to you, just sharing your space. It might be as simple as that, revisiting photos, looking at really fun times, of imagining yourself doing something silly, of watching crazy YouTube videos and just having a little chuckle. Even though you're in pain, you're allowed to have a chuckle. So there might be many, many different ways of us bringing in some safety through what seem like such simple things.
And that's what you were talking about, wasn't it? Those tiny little things that cause fear, but also the tiny little things that can create safety. Can I just give a massive shout out here at this point? Thank you, Tim. You're just amazing. A massive shout out here to David Bolton, who is so active in the Noi Group clinical discussion group. And some of his posts there will really support what Tim's been talking about today. He uploaded into the group a PDF of an example DIMS and SIMS sort of spreadsheet almost. One of his patients had allowed him to share it. The danger, the amplifiers in her life, and the SIMS, the dimmers in her life, to give you an idea of the sorts of things, a really expanded idea of the sorts of things that Tim's talking about. That was a fantastic share, David Bolton. Thank you so much. And also, I am, as I said at the beginning, I'm rerunning a lot of David's posts. Please do check them out. He's got like 50 years experience. He uses Explain Pain in his clinical work every single day with every single patient. And the whole Noise suite of concepts and ideas, and he is superb. So thank you, David, for being part of this group, and thank you for all your contributions to the clinical decision group. We are so lucky to have you. We really are. Thank you. So just to wrap up here, if you want to know more about what Tim has been talking about today, if you really want to learn how to apply this consistently, and you haven't done one of Tim's courses, then I can wholeheartedly recommend that you do one. He has got 2 dates coming up for Explain Pain. He's got spring school, which starts in about 10 days, I think, and that starts on the 20th of March. And then he's got another course coming up in April, which is over 4 sessions. So Tim, just very, very quickly, who might prefer to come on the spring school, which is run over 8 weeks, and who might prefer to come on the 4-session course?
8 weeks if you want a longer learning journey and you get a chance to try things out and talk and reflect and get to understand other people and how they work and who they work with. The shorter sessions over 2 weeks, the 4 sessions, we can still do a little bit of that, but it's slightly more didactic, slightly more me talking, particularly the second part of the course as well.
Okay.
Inevitably, like that, we have a curriculum that we're working through. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you, Tim. We will send links out to register on both for you to be able to register on both of those courses if one of those sounds interesting to you. Question: the spreadsheet that I've just talked about with the DIMS and SIMS is in the NOI group, clinical discussion group, the Facebook group. You'll have to scroll down the feed a little bit, but it is there under David Bolton's posting history. So you'll receive the links to sign up to the courses if you want to, the link to rewatch this if you want to, and also the link to the clinical discussion group will all be sent to you following this. Thank you for joining live. I am so sorry that we've run nearly 10 minutes over, but it was a great session today. Thank you, Tim. See you next time, everybody. Thank you.